Hey guys, it's Alvin and Jess, and we are
The Most Potato.
the podcast where you and your fellow couch potatoes can get together and discuss all things good, bad, and deep in popular media.
Today, we'll be discussing Netflix's live-action adaptation of One Piece, the greatest anime of all time. Don't at me. There will be spoilers ahead, so if you haven't watched this series yet, save this episode and come join us after you've watched.
Thanks for tuning in, and we hope you guys enjoy the show. All right, so we're talking One Piece today. The time has come.
Oh, well, we're just getting into it. Okay, I'm here.
So the show is finally here. It's for me and for you and for lots of anime fans. It's felt like the most dreaded day since we first heard of this adaptation.
I was talking hella shit.
We both were, and basically the whole world. So we're talking One Piece today. Netflix's latest adaptation in live action for an anime series. And they just have a wonderful track record of adapting anime onto live screen. I mean, Death Note was like a masterpiece. What else did they do? We got the 2 Full Metal Alchemist movies that, just terrible wigs, terrible costumes, terrible story writing. It was great. And then Cowboy Bebop was a disappointment, even though it had glimmers of hope in it.
Lots of hope. I'ma say it. I liked Cowboy Bebop.
I liked it more than others too. A lot of people gave it a lot of shit, but I'm like, it was okay.
Except for I keep wanting to call him Lucius.
Vicious, because I keep calling him Lucius Malfoy from Harry Potter.
I keep calling him Lucius from Empire because I keep thinking of that bad dreadlock wig that they put on that man.
Oh my God! Yes, notorious for bad wigs.
Yes, Vicious looked like a fool. His character was a fool. Didn't fit with the story of Cowboy Bebop, but I think that one had potential, and I hope they reconsider for season 2.
No, they already said they canceled it.
No, bring it back. Petitions. And who's gonna sign? Please.
Well, it's fine because we now have One Piece to talk about,
I know.
and it felt like 500 years ago when I first heard that they were going to go ahead with a live action adaptation.
I know, yeah.
And my first reactions, along with you and my friends as well, we were just like, oh, what the hell are they thinking?
What the hell?
What the hell? Out of all the animes that you've already failed, how could you adapt One Piece of all things to live action? It is the zaniest, goofiest, and it's also just got the biggest world building I've seen in any story in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
It's so many different characters with so many different unique powers, weird ass worlds. It's impossible to think how they could pull this off in a live action series. And yet it worked.
It worked.
it was actually good.
You don't know how we're sitting there. I'm watching the first episode.
You were hating up until this point. You were hating so hard. Even I got won over by the promotions that Netflix was putting out, like the last year. Like even I fell in love with the cast because they were genuinely like cute to me and they were very passionate. I still didn't think it was going to be very good, but I'm just like, man, I'm going to feel so bad if this fails because I could tell they put their heart and soul.
They really did.
With all the interviews, all the gimmicks that they were doing to promote this.
Yeah.
First of all, Netflix, where are you at with this promotional game? Because you are not there for like all the other shows that you put out besides maybe Stranger Things. Mm-hmm. They suck at promoting so hard, but with One Piece, it's like you couldn't get away. Even my algorithm on Instagram and TikTok was just all One Piece. And mind you, I'm not even a hardcore One Piece fan. I'm starting to catch up with you on this stuff. Like I'm very far behind. I'm reading the manga right now. I'm enjoying it. But even me as a hardcore fan being exposed to it I'm not a hardcore fan and being exposed to this much marketing, it's no surprise that so many people have been watching it over Labor Day weekend.
Yeah. And
yeah.
I don't know. We were just sitting there and we were watching it and I'm trying so hard not to like enjoy it.
I saw you actively trying not to smile whenever Luffy like uttered a line or you saw something that Zoro did that was very cool and very Zoro-esque.
Up. Nobody asked you.
Meanwhile, I fell in love after the first 5 minutes. They introduced Luffy. I'm like, that's Luffy.
Oh my God. Whatever.
Yeah, so we're talking live action One Piece, and right off the bat, we're saying this is actually a good show. I'm mind blown. At least I'm so blown away that this is actually the adaptation that worked. Of all the decades of Hollywood trying to adapt Japanese media into a Western sensibility, it just takes me back to the first time I got exposed to a live action adaptation of an anime series, and that was Dragon Ball Z.
Ooh.
Yeah, it was back in 2009. I was just a naive high schooler. I was like 17 or 18. And I remember seeing like the trailers for it, and I just remember thinking, wow, that doesn't look like Goku at all, but I'm going to watch it. It's going to be fun. And then even after we left, like I went with a group of friends. I think we even ditched like classes at one point to go see this. After leaving the theater, I was in great denial. My friends were just like shitting on this movie. And then I'm just like, no, guys, it was great.
It's okay.
It was fine.
Everything's fine.
Spent a whole year in denial before I realized, yeah, no, this is hot garbage. And then since then, it's just felt that way. Every adaptation that we got, it was either dog crap or it was mediocre. It didn't feel like anyone put in the effort, really. At least not up until Cowboy Bebop. I feel like they at least tried. They just didn't have the best story involving Vicious, and he's a central part of that story.
Yeah.
With One Piece, they took their love and time with this story. It really shows how much they cared, like with each episode that we watched. It really feels like these developers, these writers, these directors, I've watched a couple interviews. There's even some people that just were never familiar with One Piece. It was so funny. I think one of the directors, I think her name was Emma Sullivan. She had mentioned to her kids, like, hey, like, you know, I'm doing this show called One Piece. And then her son just like dropped everything. And he goes, Mom, don't mess this up. Don't mess this up. So like they even got people that weren't familiar with the source material that just dived in, did all their research. They all like, you know, they worked with Oda himself to make sure that they could craft the best possible story for this adaptation. And I feel like for the most part they achieved that. So just a real quick, let's just like run down like the cast and crew behind this. So we've got a couple directors that helmed like 2 episodes each for this 8-episode series. So first we got Mark Jobst, we have Emma Sullivan, Tim Southam, and Joseph Ladika. And we have our developers, aka like our showrunners, Matt Owens and Steven Maeda. And then we have a head writer, Matt Owens. I couldn't find any more names for the writers, but I'm sure there's a huge team of writers. Yeah. So shout out to them. And then we have our main Straw Hat cast. Yes. Starting with Luffy, we got Iñaki Godoy of Mexican descent.
He's so cute.
He was great.
I know.
Nami's played by Emily Rudd. She killed it as well.
Even though that wig was killing it. But
yeah.
You get used to it.
Yeah. And then we've got Jacob Romero of Jamaican descent. You got representation going on for you.
Woo woo.
Playing Usopp. We've got Makenyu of Japanese descent, Roronoa Zoro. Taz Skylar, who is British, playing Sanji. And that's our main cast. We'll get into a lot of other characters as we break down these episodes and the series as a whole. But that's our main crew. And I got to say, they really just, they killed it with their roles. There were like a couple of weak episodes here and there, but for the most part, they fleshed out these characters as much as they could with the time that they had. Yeah. That was like the biggest thing that I was worried about. But for anyone who's unfamiliar, any of our listeners who are unfamiliar with anime or One Piece as a whole, I'm just going to do like a general breakdown of the plot. It's very simple. So basically we follow the journey of the Straw Hat Pirates on their quest for a legendary treasure called the One Piece. And this treasure is a legendary treasure that'll make their captain, Monkey D. Luffy, king of the pirates, who happens to have stretchy, rubbery powers. He can stretch his limbs anywhere. But they're not alone in this dangerous quest. With Marines hot on their heels and surrounded by formidable pirates competing for that same treasure, this newly formed team of pirates, the Straw Hats, they put their unique skills and their friendship to the test and ready to fight for their dreams together. And if that plot summary sounded cheesy for you, guess what? That's basically almost every anime. The power of friendship just always prevails.
Yes.
So, and they really turned up the charm with their friendship. If their camaraderie as a group of pirates didn't work, this show would have easily fallen apart.
Mm-hmm.
If you didn't get a sense of these characters bonding with each other and you caring about their goals and their fears, it would have easily collapsed. It's crazy.
Yeah, I think, well, we haven't discussed everything yet, but I think they did a really good job with showing that in such a short amount of time, because that's what's really important, is loving the characters, the Straw Hat crew, and their bond together. I think that's so important, and I'm just really happy they were able to pull that off and show that.
Yeah.
For people who haven't even like watched One Piece or read One Piece, I think that this still shows, and I think that this definitely would make them say, hey, maybe I'll watch
Definitely
all short thousands of those episodes.
Yeah.
Or I'll pick up the manga. Either one, both. It's really good, but I think they showed that here, even with the small tweaks that they did make. I think everything is just as it was. It wasn't anything different. They had to like cut some stuff or rearrange things, but they rearranged in such a good way that I didn't even notice. And I said, oh wow, I said that works too. Yeah. You know, that makes sense for the pacing of this show. So I was surprised. Honestly, that's all I can say.
Least,
like, I will admit it. I was wrong. I sit right here and I say I was wrong. And I'm actually happy that I was wrong, because
me too.
I didn't want this to be a disaster that I had to put in the back of my head like Game of Thrones. Like, I have to like, I want this to be in the forefront like this. I acknowledge this. I acknowledge Netflix's live action adaptation of One Piece.
Yeah, and it's just up until a week ago, right before watching the show, you know, we were just constantly saying, oh, this just isn't going to work. Like, I was getting a little more optimistic, but I was being blinded by the marketing and how good it was.
Yes, that's how they get you.
But even I was just like, oh, man, how are they going to pull this off? And just to have sat through that whole series in like under 2 days, me wanting more of this world in this format, it still blows my mind. I feel like I'm outside my body right now because of how surreal it is for me to say that this is a good live action adaptation.
Yeah.
It finally just breaks a trend of just a series of really bad to mediocre adaptations, because there's just so many people that just don't understand what stories work for translating to Western media and what doesn't. And there's like a lot of executives that don't understand or care about anime. And sometimes they try to go too close to the adaptation, and you have actors overacting and being really goofy and weird.
Which
and
I was definitely worried about.
Yeah, and then you go on the total opposite end where they just go way too serious, and you lose some of the charm of those anime series. And One Piece really just balances that very tightrope balance of mixing the goofiness with the serious. They really found like a good balance of that for the most part. I never once found myself really cringing at anything, whether it was a character delivering a piece of dialogue or like even like an action set piece. For the most part, I enjoyed all of it. The world building is like another thing that I was super worried about, because it's such an expansive world.
Yeah.
Mind you, we're just like in the East Blue arc, so we're not fully engrossed into all kinds of islands and all different kinds of pirates yet. But just in that saga alone, there's a lot of different pieces going around. You've got like the Marines that you have to worry about, different pirates, the lore of the devil fruits,
the sea beasts,
just so many different things, and setting up so many different characters. Because the thing with anime is that it's a long running series and you have so many episodes that you can produce. It's not the same as a Netflix series where you have 8 to 10 episodes. So I'm really glad to say that they really paid attention to fitting as much of the world as they could in this 8 episode run without it feeling like overwhelming or feeling like confusing.
Yeah.
Because I'm someone who, even though I've watched a lot of anime, I'm not super into One Piece. This just made me more excited to continue reading and watching the anime.
All my hard work.
No, but like I'm saying, like even for somebody who's a very newcomer who's not familiar with anime or just not familiar with One Piece in general, I feel like they could go into this show and just they'll get it. They'll understand the mechanics, even though they won't fully understand everything. Like, why are people talking with little snail microphone things? But it's just weird, and it's just accepted in that world, and it doesn't feel like a massive confusion.
Yeah.
the same way I felt confused for 3 seasons now of the fucking Witcher, where I'm just like, what? Who are these elf people? Why are they going to war? I came here to see Henry Cavill slicing some demons. Like, like I did not feel like I was confused. I didn't feel indifferent to what was going on. The world is really fun. It kind of feels like Pirates of the Caribbean, but like way more out there. And they really pulled it off with tightening everything in terms of who gets to interact with who. And they introduced the characters in a really good pace for the most part as well.
Yeah, I was worried about that because I was like, 8 episodes, and I was just like, okay, who are our straw hats that we know is going to be in this? How far does it go?
Yeah.
Are they going to be able to, introduce them, like how they get roped into Luffy's crew?
Right.
And then I noticed in the promotions too that they had, like this happens in the story as well too, but the flashbacks of when they were kids, and I was just like, how are they going to fit all of that into it?
Yeah.
But then I also had to remember that I was watching the anime and the pacing is shit in the anime.
Yeah,
so it's
and
just
the
like,
episodes came out weekly.
Exactly. If you cut all that stuff, like all the extra stuff in the anime, then you'll get to every arc or every character as quickly as you need to without it feeling rushed. So this definitely worked, and they did a good job of like doing that, giving us flashback, so that way we can know what each Straw Hat's dreams are and how they're going to help each other, like, achieve those goals.
Yeah.
So I thought that was great.
Definitely. So world building is great. Pacing is great for the most part. They nailed the character interactions. Like, their timing of people running into each other was perfect. Visual effects for the most part are good. It's definitely pretty wonky in some sections, specifically with Luffy's like gum fruit powers. But like,
that was expected.
It's just expected because, just go back and look at Mr. Fantastic in the Doctor Strange movie, the multiverse one. Making somebody stretchy there's no realistic way to portray that. It's such a goofy, stupid concept.
I don't know if I would want to see that realistic. That just sounds nasty.
It would, for me, it would look like body horror from the 80s. Because you would see like the muscles and the bones like having to stretch, and you'd hear contortions, and it's just gross. So you have no choice but to make it cartoony, and I'm glad they just embraced that. The set pieces actually looked good for the most part because they actually built practical effects for the boats, the restaurant scenes, like the indoor practical effects. I'm really glad that they're still doing this in Hollywood, because this whole thing that Disney's doing right now with all of their shows, where they're just in one big globe and they just got a screen projected with a few physical sets here and there.
Pretend this is this, and pretend that is that.
I'm just like, why are there shadows crisscrossing when the sun is positioned right there? Like, you guys aren't even paying attention to the details. So I'm glad that they try to make it as lived in as possible. Like, when they were out in external environments as well, like when Luffy encounters Zoro, basically hung out on a post, it still looked like it was like a marine base.
Yeah.
And it was funny because some of the coloring is pretty bright, and it kind of was reminiscent of the bright coloring of the backgrounds in the early seasons of One Piece before they had a higher budget to really put in the details of the background.
Yeah.
That's something that just jumped out at me. I don't know if they did that on purpose or what, but it kind of felt reminiscent of the coloring style that they used to have in the old anime when it first started. So visual effects for the most part are really good. I really like the sea beast. It's a goofy looking creature, but they made it as practical as it could look in a live action setting. So at this point, let's just like get into like our characters and just how they were portrayed, because I think that's like the biggest thing that people were worried about.
Yeah.
Is how are these characters going to come across? Because we got our main character, Luffy, who can fucking stretch. He's hyperactive. He's kind of a knucklehead. He's very narrow-minded. It could have easily gone the wrong way, where he could have been a really annoying character in live action.
Yeah.
And not once did I feel that he was irritating or that he fell flat or that he was way too over the top. He really felt like a real lived-in character. Yes, he's goofy, but he has a lot of heart as well. You see like different dimensions of emotions in him as well as the series progresses. So he isn't just like this one-note character. He's actually really well fleshed out. So I don't know. What were your thoughts on Luffy?
I thought he was very fleshed out, as you said. I was worried in the promotions because obviously all they're gonna show is like him. I'm gonna be king of the pirates,
Right.
and I stretch. I'm rubber. Ha ha ha. And I'm just like, oh my god. I was like, this is just gonna be ridiculous. But in the moments that counted, he was able to adjust and change. And like, if you watch the anime, you see that as goofy and stupid as Luffy is, there is growth. He does become not only physically stronger, but he's a stronger captain.
He's a little more mature by the end.
He's mature.
Well, very slightly.
Very slightly.
We're giving him too much credit.
I know, right? Too much. But I can see him, developing, and as he has more people that he cares about on his crew, he's willing to put himself out there and do what needs to be done for, whoever it is that he calls his friend. So I definitely saw that, with him in a lot of the episodes, with his relationship with Nami. I'm really liking that and seeing that, because Luffy and Nami, they actually do have like a close relationship.
They're like brother and sister.
Basically. And I picked that up and I saw that in the live action, and I appreciate that. Between the two characters, the actors did a really good job. But I think he did a really good job being more than just a goofy, rubber kid, looking for the One Piece. I think he did a really, really good job.
Yeah.
Other characters, I think Zoro's pretty good.
I like him a lot.
Yeah, there's like a little bit.
He's a little more stoic than we're used to in the anime, but Zoro is kind of a stoic character in the anime. The way that anime works is that a lot of characters will like yell and be very loud and expressive when they're frustrated. So Zoro looks goofy when he's frustrated, because then he has like this big ass head and his eyes are like all goofy looking when he yells at somebody when he's irritated. But for the most part, he is kind of like a stoic, serious character.
Yes, yeah.
So he's like the most serious of the pirate crew so far. So I liked his live action adaptation. Maybe he could use a little bit more expressive emotions at times. But for the most part, I think Makenyu captured his essence like very genuinely.
Yeah.
Because he's supposed to be like a 19-year-old at this point, right?
Yeah.
He's fairly young. So he's very naive. Like when he thought he could stand up to Mihawk, I'm like, bro,
God.
What is wrong with you?
I know.
So, but I really like Zoro's portrayal. I don't really think I came up with any complaints about him other than maybe just be a little bit more emotionally expressive during the heavier moments of the show.
Yeah. I think I agree with that. Yeah, there could be like a little bit more, but like you said, he's pretty stoic. So in the anime, there are those goofy moments and like silly moments, more him reacting to like Sanji nonsense. Or Luffy, reacting to their nonsense and stuff. So it shows here, but it's just like it's a little different, which makes sense. It has to be
more subdued.
Yeah. And then who do we have next? We have Nami.
Nami was she was good. She also carries that essence of she's only looking out for herself.
She hurt me.
I know,
she
right?
hurt my feelings.
And it
like,
works.
Girl, what you doing? Like,
which is great because that's exactly how it plays out in the source material as well. You see that she's, forming a bond with the Straw Hat crew, but you see that she makes a 180 turn and betrays them when she steals the Grand Line map, which we'll get into later on. But Emily Rudd and the writers, they captured her essence as well. They really captured her being a tortured soul. Like the entire time, you see that there's wheels turning behind her, where she's not fully revealing what her intentions are exactly.
Yeah.
But you see that she's growing to care for these people that she's come in contact with and kind of already been on one or two adventures with. And it just felt like it could have easily felt rushed and flat, but it just never felt like that at all. It really felt natural and organic. And even though she doesn't have like that seduction charm that she uses in the manga or anime to get what she wants, she still does it actually from time to time. Like when she steals that Marine's uniform.
Yes.
So she at least still does that. but they don't make that like her main sort of characteristic.
She's not super sexed up. Like,
yeah,
I can have a character that's like more than just
exactly.
I mean
Oda did that in the manga as well.
Yeah.
I don't think she's ever really over sexualized besides the way that characters are drawn, which that's typical of anime and manga.
I mean, after the time skip,
yeah, the bazookas.
Even Usopp was like, well, Nami, you grew.
Yeah, so they really killed it with Nami's portrayal. Sanji was also really good. I really love the Sanji story, and they fleshed him out really quickly without it being rushed as well.
Yeah.
I really love the episode. I think it was like episode 6 when they do that flashback of him and Chef Zeph being stranded on that island after a failed attempt on Sanji's boat, and then just like showing that bond of sharing that same goal and that dream of going to the all blue and just being able to make all the recipes that they want because they're both passionate chefs.
Yeah.
There's like so many unique characters in this show with different goals that are so separate from each other, but it connects them all together because they can all relate to doing whatever it takes to achieve those goals. And Sanji, he pulled it off. I mean, Taz Skylar, I think is his name, right?
Yeah.
I think he did fantastic. He turned on the charm when he needed to, when he got horny around Nami.
Zom 100. Watch that as well, too.
Yeah, so he's got the flirtatiousness that he's famous for with all the women.
Mm-hmm.
His fighting style actually looks pretty cool on live action. Like,
yeah.
I like that they kind of adapted it where he's genuinely like kicking people. He's not always got his hands in his pockets because you can get away with that in animation, but in live action, if you do that all the time, it's just like, it's too goofy.
It really is.
So he really, like his kicks, I felt impact whenever he did like hits on somebody. His backstory was fleshed out really well. He had like 2 episodes to have that fleshed out.
Because I was worried. We were watching an episode, I guess, when they first got to the restaurant? And then I was just like, where's Sanji's story? But it came, like it was, it was.
So there were other
out.
things going on first before it got to Sanji's story. Yeah, but again, like you said, it worked out just fine.
The only thing I don't like is his hair. I think it could look a little better, honestly.
Yeah, it looks like a little frizzed and like little burnt, kind of like crispy.
Know. And I'm just like, Sanji is supposed to be like clean cut, like.
He is for the most part. It's just his hair is a little wonky.
The hair goes with the outfit. Mm-hmm. Do it up, fix it.
Season 2 budget.
Yes.
Go get that nice silk press. And then we got Usopp, which he was fantastic, but I also feel like he's one of the only characters that felt kind of undercooked for me in the Straw Hat.
No, I can see that.
Because he has 2 episodes as well with his story. We'll get into that a little later, but he essentially is introduced to the Straw Hats. We don't really get a sense of what his goal actually is. We get the introduction that, his father Yasopp was on Shanks's crew, which Luffy's attached to those characters. He grew up with those people. So there's like that nice little moment of interaction with Luffy and Usopp bonding over that, but we don't get too much of that.
He's like, my dad?
Yeah. I feel like they should have expanded on that interaction more. But we don't really get to see Usopp's sort of growth and journey as a character in his story. We know that he's like this basically famous liar in a village. He's like the boy who cried wolf, essentially, and nobody takes him seriously when shit goes down. We never get to see him earn that respect and relationship with the village that you were mentioning that we saw in the anime and the manga, because he has, in the original source material, he's friends with these children, and he has like this whole pretend pirate crew thing going on. And that kind of builds a bridge with the village when it's finally his turn to save the village from these pirates that raid their village. We don't really get that same scenario play out. So we get just enough of Usopp where we like the character. I just wish that they had fleshed out his dream a little bit more.
Yeah.
It was a little vague.
Because, I mean, his thing is he wants to be like a great warrior of the sea. Like, that's like Usopp. That's like what he's supposed to like want. But I feel like in the
I feel like his dream should have been to go find his dad.
Damn. His dad's not that hard to find. He just don't want to see him. Yeah, but no, I think that like when I think of Usopp, like watching the anime or reading the material, like he wants to be a great warrior of the sea. He's a great shot. But I feel like here
They don't emphasize
they
those
don't
as much.
yeah, they don't put that in, because when that's basically the last episode when they all put their foot on the barrel and they're, you know, announcing like what is their dream, what is their goal, what do they want. He like hesitates and he's just like, yeah,
I'm gonna be the greatest pirate warrior.
yeah. I was just like, are you sure? Because like that's what you're supposed to actually want, because he tells all these like wild tales of like these things that he did, and you know, there's a giant goldfish and he landed on a pile of shit. It was the goldfish shit or whatever. And I was just like, it sounds like you're conquering. Like, can we like make that what it is? And I think
they didn't flesh that out too much.
Not even flesh. They didn't like basically write it out for us. Like, they could have just done that. It's just like with everybody else, they're saying, you know, Luffy wants to be king of pirates. Zoro wants to be the greatest swordsman in the whole world. Nami wants to draw a map of the world. And, you know, Sanji all blue. They all have these things that they basically say. They spell it out for us. Yeah. And Usopp's is never done that way, which I can't understand. I'm just like, he tells all these great tales to Kaya. Yeah. And it just sounds like he wants to go on great adventures and like conquer the sea. Yeah. So like they could have just said that, and I feel like they didn't. Which they didn't put much emphasis. Yeah, which made his dream kind of lacking. It made him just like, oh yeah, I guess I'll just come with you guys or whatever. Yeah. Which I guess that's pretty much what they do in the anime, but it's written out or like spoken out that that's what he wants to do. That's what he wants to be. Yeah. You know. But and then he's got his like, you know, his little lies and all stuff like that he tells, and he exaggerates and stuff. So that's Usopp, but I didn't feel like they did that enough here. Yeah, that's exactly how I feel, which doesn't make or break the character, because for the most part we enjoyed his character. Yeah. I just feel like moving forward, if they do get a season 2, I hope they emphasize it more with his character. Yeah. Because I feel like they kind of swept that under the rug for Usopp, which is interesting. But for the most part, the character portrayals for the main crew, they really nailed it. They shocked me with this. And then, again, going back to world building real quick, the fact that there's so much heavy emphasis on the Marine chasing Luffy and his crew, I really like that, because I feel like that helps connect the world with Luffy a lot more. Because now that he's being chased by the Marines, especially being chased by his grandfather Garp, which is revealed by like the end of like what, episode 2 or 3 or something. Yeah, he's like, Grandpa. Which is I think that's the showrunners had a huge benefit of this manga being out in the world for so long. They've got all this information now that they can pack in this first season with just enough information to make us care about these characters and what's going on with them. Yeah, because I think that's fucking funny. A pirate going out for like a treasure that he wants so bad so that he can be the most like famous pirate ever, and he's being chased by the military run by his own grandfather. Like, that just feels like a comedy series in and of itself. Yeah, I think it's so great that they introduced the Garp character early on, and he was a fantastic character as well. The guy that plays him, let me see if I can find the name for the actor. I don't know if I have him up here. Yeah, Vincent Reagan. Yes, Vincent Reagan. I've never heard of this cast. Like, nobody here is famous except for the narrator, Ian McShane, who plays... What's the name of the guy from John Wick that mentors John Wick? Is he Vincent or something? Oh, him? Yeah. Oh, wow. I don't think you noticed, but when the narrator first shows up in episode 1, I'm like, is that Ian McShane? And then I looked him up, and I'm like, it is. I'm like, you guys spent a pretty penny just for him to say a few sentences each episode. But yes, Vincent Reagan did a phenomenal job playing Garp. I think I mentioned to you after this show ended that Garp was probably my favorite character in all of this, which is so funny because I didn't know much about him before this because, again, I'm not caught up on the story. So for me to like love Garp out of all these super cool characters in the Straw Hat crew, it's just funny that this guy who's just basically low-key like maniacal and crazy, because every time he's like frustrated with not catching Luffy, he just bursts out into laughter and he's like, that's my boy. Yes, basically. It's just like, what is going on in this guy's brain right now? And I like that they put like his story in there, like they from the get-go. Yeah, because you have Kobe. Kobe, who's a phenomenal like
they decided to emphasize him and keep him on the story longer as well.
Yeah,
to connect everything.
Because he's basically like the first friend that Luffy makes out on the sea.
Yes.
And you know, Kobe, he's on the pirate ship, Alvida's pirate ship, and he's basically like
he's held hostage like a slave.
Basically, yes. So he's there, and then, you know, Luffy and his loudmouth comes. He's just like, yeah, why don't you just tell her you want to leave and that she sucks and all that stuff? And he's just like, what? Don't say that. And, you know, Luffy basically ends up destroying the ship and, beating and besting Alvida. And him and Kobe, they, you know, that's how they end up at the Marine base.
And forming a friendship.
And forming a friendship. And, after Luffy meets Zoro and I guess Nami, and they decide to leave after they cause all this chaos on the Marine base. That's when Kobe decides he's going to stay back. He wants to be a Marine. That's his dream. And Luffy's like, you go for it. And we're friends, and I want you to follow your dream, and, you know, we'll be on opposite sides.
Yeah, opposing sides.
But it's
they're
like
friends.
They're friends, you know.
Wild.
So, you know, that I like that Kobe is just like, Luffy, he's something, but like he's pushing him to follow his dreams, which is really important. And that's how eventually Garp and Kobe meet, and he takes him under his wing along with that goof, whatever his face is, I forget, Helmpo or whatever.
Helmeppo.
I always forget how to say
Helmeppo.
his name. His haircut's really stupid. It's even stupider seeing it live
Zoro.
action. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I like the relationship shown here. I think it gives like a little bit more than like what I remember seeing in the anime between Garp and Kobe, because Kobe's everything Garp wanted Luffy to basically be.
He's essentially like an adoptive son to Garp, which is I
always
love it.
funny because I mean, what you have Shanks, Luffy, and then you have Dragon, Sabo, and then you have Whitebeard and Ace.
Yeah.
Like everybody's daddy who's like actually around or alive still ain't being the daddy to their actual kid. They daddying somebody else.
Yeah.
So it's just like, it's really funny. But I liked how this was in the background, because I was just like, okay, well, what else do you fill in like as Luffy goes along and picks up his crew? So this was good. And them running into, or Garp and Kobe finally catching up with Luffy and his crew comes in a little bit earlier than in the anime, because I think that part comes in after. Is it after they save Robin or something like that? So I like what they've been doing, where they're, you know, being like, let's introduce this earlier, or let's swap these around, let's like make this the main thing that pushes the story. I really enjoyed how they did that. But I do like Garp and Kobe's story. I feel like I got a little bit more from the characters than I did actually reading or watching. You know?
Yeah, definitely. And shout out to Morgan Davies playing Kobe, because I didn't recognize Morgan up until I looked him up, because he I think they're non-binary, so I think they go by they. The last time I saw them, they were in that movie Evil Dead Rise, and they were the reason why. They were the reason why everyone started dying in the movie, because they decided, I'm going to read this evil book and play this evil music.
Oh, great.
So I'm glad to see Morgan Davies just redeeming themselves by being friends with Luffy. Everyone does a phenomenal job. And the showrunners, they really knew how to tie in certain characters so that we bond with them easily, but also make sense to the source material so that it reflects the relationships that we see way later on in the manga series. All right, so let's talk about like the combined arcs in this East Blue Saga. So we basically get introduced to so many antagonists like early on within like the first 2 episodes. We've got the Marines going after the Straw Hats. We run into Buggy the Clown. We see Arlong's crew show up fairly early, but very like unceremoniously compared to the original source material. We even get like a little interaction with Mihawk. That's a lot of antagonists to show up in an 8-episode series.
Yeah.
It could have easily felt like the writers could have gotten lost and lost focus for the viewers, but for me, everything felt perfectly spaced out. It felt like everyone was introduced at the right time. I don't know. How did you feel about how the villains were introduced in this series?
I felt that it worked out fine, because if we go to the very beginning of the first episode, that's Goldie Rogers' execution.
Yeah.
where he's basically gonna be like, yeah, my treasure's out there, go find it, and then all hell breaks loose and stuff, and that's when he's executed. In the crowd, you see Shanks, a young,
glimpses,
you see a young Shanks,
young
Mihawk, Buggy, even Smoker, who is hinted at the very end. He was really young, much younger than Shanks and Buggy, and I was looking again at some clips, and they mentioned that Crocodile might have been in that crowd
as a
too,
woman.
but as a woman, if you guys know further on in the series and stuff like that, if you know, you know. But yeah, so they put them in there, and I feel like there's a reason that they're in there.
Yeah. Again, they have the benefit of foresight. There's been so much material over the last 20 years.
Yes.
So they can pick and choose how to place people properly.
Yes, and those characters were in the crowd, and you know, so I think that's good that they show up again. And then as Luffy is just starting out and he's out there, he's like, I'm gonna find the One Piece, and how these characters all connect. And if you don't know, like if you picked up on them being in that crowd during that very start of that episode, you'll see how it's all connected. You see how there might be more to a character or more to their story. And as we're introduced to Buggy, like when he hears about Shanks, because he notices the straw hat or whatever, and he's all, you know, talking his shit and kind of like jealous, and it's just like, do they know each other? Is there more to that story?
You feel like there's already a relationship established, a whole history.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I thought that the way that they introduced everything and then started going through, you know, the episodes to, you know, each character, I thought that they did a good job doing that. But
yeah, no, definitely. I totally agree with you, because again, this could have been easily messy and sloppy, and like I mentioned the example of Witcher earlier. I had no idea what the hell was going on in that world.
Yeah.
When we were watching season 1, I had no idea that there were 2 different time periods going on. I didn't know that.
Was it 2? Because I felt like maybe it was like 4 or 5 or something.
Maybe,
I have no idea.
Their filming style and their world building was so shaky. There was so much going on, and I don't know why, because when you really look at it, it's not that complicated, but they made it complicated.
Made it so complicated.
It could have easily gone this way for One Piece, with juggling all these villains, all these heroes, all these different plot points. And again, they knew when to introduce characters at certain points.
Yeah.
Just the fact that Luffy and Kobe run into Zoro at a freaking bar, basically, which we don't see in the anime. We see after the fact in the anime. So it's nice that these showrunners know when to have these characters interact with each other. Having Arlong introduced early on in the series was perfect. It was smart to do that, because he's kind of set up as the main big bad for like the finale of this season. And, you know, this story doesn't focus on just one specific antagonist as the overall villain. There are several people that get in the way of the Straw Hat crew. And they had to really juggle that and pace it well enough so that people understand, oh, they're dealing with multiple people because there's so many people going after the One Piece. So they really captured that world really well, where everyone is actually going after the same treasure, and people will cut each other down. No matter how strong or weak you might be, they will go after you.
Yeah. And speaking of cutting, they really did do some cutting in there, which I was a little surprised. I don't know why.
Which parts were you surprised at, if you have anything in mind?
I don't know. Zoro cutting somebody in half, bringing their body
Oh, was
part.
it Mr. 7?
Yeah, Mr. 7.
That didn't
Mr.
happen
7.
in the manga, right? They just mentioned that he had cut somebody down from Baroque Works, but they actually show it.
Yes.
Which is, again, smart. This is how you do storytelling in a live-action adaptation. You show, don't tell, because people aren't going to care as much in a live-action series where they just mention, oh, Zoro cut down this really bad villainous swordsman guy from Baroque Works.
Yeah. And then I was just like, damn, that was pretty quick. I was like, who's the next Mr. 7? I'm only going to have to do some reading again.
Which, I mean, it makes sense that he cut him down so fast, because it's kind of an afterthought in the manga.
No, yeah, I know.
Because he just mentions, like, oh, yeah, I killed that dude and I collected my bounty.
Yeah, because that's who Zoro is. And
they don't do it just for the sake of showing how cool Zoro is with the swords. It tells you what kind of personality he has and what he's going after. He chases after pirates because he wants money and he wants to be the best swordsman. that creates tension with Luffy because Luffy wants him as a first mate, and Zoro is resistant to that. So those choices really help build up the characters and the relationships that much faster without it feeling forced.
Yeah.
And again, introducing the fishmen people with Arlong when they get to Sanji's story made perfect sense because I think even Arlong shows up when they defeat Buggy the Clown in episode 2? I think that's episode 2. We already see Arlong, and we see that he's going to be this menacing force throughout this series.
Yeah.
So they really have set up these interactions where it all makes sense and you feel invested in all these characters. Because Buggy the Clown, let's get into him real quick. He's a very like charming character because even though he's antagonistic, he's been a fan favorite for so many people in the manga and anime. And I'm seeing so many people on TikTok right now just like making these funny videos of like women thirsting for Buggy.
The bitches love him.
Buggy the bitch killer.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I like Buggy. I think I like...
You like anime Buggy more?
I do. I like
sense.
him better. But
they did good with this one.
Yeah, they did do good with this guy. And I thought he was like, funny, unhinged, a little bit. And
yeah.
I think that came across very well. And then, like you said, Arlong coming to interrogate him.
Yeah.
They definitely, showed Buggy's bitch side. And
no, they show many sides to him because you mentioned earlier the interaction with him and Luffy and how when Buggy talks about Shanks, you just feel his anger and his anguish. Like he genuinely sounds kind of hurt almost.
Yeah, he is.
And we won't get to know exactly what happened with the character of Buggy and Shanks until later on in the story. I don't know if they'll flesh that out a bit more in the next season if they greenlight one, but they did a good job with like basically already having a world built in Buggy where he already seems to have a history with certain people and his goals, are directly antagonistic towards Luffy's. So he already kind of feels fully fleshed out without fully knowing his whole backstory just yet.
Yeah.
We don't even know how or why he got into contact with the chop fruit because he's also another person like Luffy who ate this weird devil fruit and now he's able to dismember his limbs at will, and it makes him pretty dangerous because how do you kill a dude that can cut himself? Because Zoro tried slicing him up and that didn't work.
Yeah.
If anything, that just makes it worse. The more you cut him up, the more like annoying and more of a nuisance he is in a fight.
Literally have to just put him underwater. That's the only way.
Put him underwater, or like what they did with Luffy's plan, which is separating his body parts into different caskets and like different trunks.
But even that's not killing him.
No, it just temporarily like destabilizes him as a threat.
And I liked when they did that and then he put himself back together, but it was just like some boots, a head, and like hands.
Nice homage to the manga and anime. It was so
like,
funny.
Ew.
I know it's more gross looking in live action.
Yeah, a lot of it was gross looking, but I think it translated well. It was good. I liked it.
Yeah. Again, that looked really goofy, but there's no realistic way of making somebody dismember themselves.
So, yeah, because I was like, it really doesn't matter what parts. He could do any part of himself however he wants to.
Any part. Any part. Ladies, any part.
Yeah, shush you. But yeah, so it's like any part. So when they did it, I was just like, oh, that looks a little silly. But I was like, Luffy's arms look a little silly. And then I was just like, that ugly ass fishman with the bad plastic surgery face looked really silly too. You guys know what I'm talking about if you've seen it. Too much Botox in that fish, man. But yeah, some of it was really silly, but it's just, you just go along with it, for what it is, for what they're working with.
Because it's One Piece. Like, Oda intentionally made this world goofy and zany as hell, but he also knows how to write a very powerful, touching story and knows how to write really great characters. He just didn't want to take the world so ridiculously seriously. He wanted his manga to stand out above all the other ones that, for the most part, take themselves very serious.
Yeah.
So, in order to capture that, you kind of have to run with the goofiness in the live action as well. Just don't lean into it so hard that people just tune out of it.
Yeah.
So, I think they did a really good job with still keeping the goofiness, but not overly depending on it to the point where it's just like you can't even take what's going on seriously anymore. So Buggy is also kind of like one of my favorite characters in this series, even though we don't get to have that much time with him. I like that later on it's revealed that a piece of his ear was in Luffy's straw hat the whole time because he's working with Arlong to capture this kid.
Yeah.
Because they're all trying to... Essentially, Garp is also trying to use his resources to try to get to Luffy as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I like that these converging enemies, even if they're not directly working with each other, they're all going after that same goal of stopping the Straw Hats.
Yeah.
It always feels like they're on the run and that their lives are threatened. And they feel like newbies as well. This is the key thing, is that these people have never been pirates before. Not a single one of them.
Yeah.
This is their first time sailing a ship together, going out to sea. And they make a lot of mistakes, and they have a lot of close calls, like when Garp throws that freaking cannonball at the ship, and Luffy has to redirect those cannonballs before their new ship is already fully destroyed. So I like that they kind of raise the stakes and show us that these people don't fully know what they're doing. You see Usopp just like fumbling with all the cannonballs, dropping down on the stairs.
Didn't even know where to actually put the cannonball.
Because he fucking lied, saying like, oh yeah, I know how to load cannons. I'm a warrior. It's like, you just know how to shoot popcorn shells with a slingshot.
Exactly.
So it's really fun to see people way in over their heads trying to be pirates. But you get behind it because they all have goals that they want to attain. And you take it seriously, even if they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. You feel for them because it's just like, I care about these characters and I care about them reaching their goals. I don't want them to get hurt.
Mm-hmm.
So they really nailed all of those aspects. There was like a couple episodes that I think specifically, I think it was 3 and 4 with Captain Kuro. I think those episodes were the weakest ones for me because we said a lot of positive things, but there were some things that didn't work for me. I liked the Kuro story for the most part. I think it made sense to sort of scale down his attack on the Kaya household because he doesn't have like a full-fledged pirate crew on deck.
Yeah.
Like we see in the original source material. It's more like, kind of feels like a home invasion type of story, which could work because he has 2 other crewmates working with him, but his story felt kind of flattened, and it doesn't help that, like we mentioned earlier, Usopp's backstory kind of cut short, and his goal is not fully realized, and we don't fully understand what it is that he really wants as a pirate. Because we know that he cares about his friend Kaya, who is deathly sick, and which we later find out that Kuro, who's pretending to be this nice butler, is actually a formidable pirate who faked his own death and is trying to steal Kaya's riches.
Yeah. That's mad work just for some...
I mean, do what you can, I guess, as a fake dead person, but I just, like... There was, like, a plot hole that bothered me. I don't know if this is a plot hole, but, like, there were wanted posters of this man. And it's not like he got facial reconstruction surgery or anything. So not once did any authorities run into this guy in the village and be like, hey.
It's because he was wearing glasses as a butler. Yes.
As a pirate, he never wore glasses.
He did not. And then if you notice, too, he kept pushing up his glasses with, like, the end of his hand. Yeah, like his palm.
Yeah.
Or whatever. Because he's so used to having the claws or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was just like, okay, whatever. But I do feel like those episodes, they were kind of meh for me. Like
it just spent like a lot of dead air time for me.
Yeah.
They could have used a lot more of that time to really flesh out, first of all, Usopp's backstory.
I think they should have added the 3 young boys that,
that would have been nice.
That was his little crew or something. They could have incorporated them in there.
Yeah, because he pretends to be a pirate,
yeah,
and then now he gets an opportunity to actually be a pirate because he's always wanted to go on adventures.
Yeah.
We don't get a sense of that. So, yeah, maybe having those child friends could have helped build that up. And then Kuro is also kind of like, he's all right. He's kind of threatening, but he's also kind of stupid because for some reason he just quickly goes into kill mode. And the whole time, Kaya still thinks that Kuro is a nice butler.
Mm-hmm.
She still hasn't found out. She has no hard evidence that Kuro is going after her riches. Yeah. And he just decides to be Freddy Krueger and just walk through the hallways at night, just
talking
yelling
mad shit. Kaya, I miss my mommy, my dad. And I was like, damn.
You just gave her evidence. Like, Nami's over here trying to talk sense into Kaya, and Kaya's not listening.
Yeah.
And then Kuro's just like, yeah, bitch, I'm evil. Give me your money. Give me your riches.
Yeah. I liked that they cut what happened in the anime because like I like basically his whole crew is like waiting offshore for him, and then we have that whole annoying shore fight in the anime that like takes forever. The pacing's awful. So I was like, okay, what are they gonna do? So when they're like, okay, it's Kuro and like two of his crewmates or whatever, one's being a cook and then one's like I guess like a servant or whatever, and they've been there the whole time waiting for this plan, waiting for Kaya basically to turn 18, because that's when literally everything is in her care, like everything that her parents own goes over to her. Yeah. And then that's when he kills her and, takes over everything and her riches. So I'm just like, okay, that makes sense. That's better. So then all the fighting could be left, like, it's literally left in the house. The house is locked down and, it's a closed off thing where the town's not really involved at all. They don't know anything that's going on. And that's until they have the Marines literally come all the way up to the house to be like, oh yeah, we
heard Luffy was around here.
Yeah, and then we heard Usopp crying about pirates, and we believe him because we don't live here and stuff. So I thought that was a good way to cut, a lot of the stuff that happened to make the story like move forward. Yeah. But it was a little dull for me. Yeah. I felt, and I don't know if that's Kaya's fault because she is dull as fuck. Like,
I mean, she's dull even in the anime for me personally.
But I feel like a lot. They
could have filled it more with actual important plot points to move the story along, and they just kind of didn't do that. They kind of meandered a bit. And
we had the flashback, Zoro's flashback,
which was good. Yeah, I like that they had established his backstory and what his goal ultimately is, which is to become the greatest swordsman. Because now it's not just about him. He wants to carry that dream forward for a childhood friend who passed away. Which I got another gripe with that one, because as much as I appreciated that flashback, I hated the fact that the sensei was just like, yeah, she had an accident. She's gone. I'm like, you sound kind of sus. Like, did you low-key just wanted to kill her and you just didn't want to admit it? Because what do you mean she died? She was perfectly healthy looking, so it's not like she had some sort of grave disease.
She slipped and bust her ass. That's what happened. I don't know why they didn't just say that and be like, Kuina slipped and bust her ass.
Which also is like so anticlimactic and funny, but at least say that. They didn't even mention that in the live action. They just said, she had an accident. She's gone.
They could have,
it just sounds so sus to me.
And then they just like, okay, we're all wearing black. And then Zoro goes up. He's like, let me have the sword, fam. And then, the guy's just like, yeah. He's like, all right, yeah.
Go for it.
I was just like, what? So it wasn't very emotional for me. Yeah. Let me see. I think Nami's backstory of her childhood, definitely emotional. Like, that one, that was good. Usopp's, his was kind of emotional for me in the anime. Like, I felt for him, but in this live action, it was really funny. He's there talking to his mom, and she's like, okay, I can't take this kid's last name. Mama, just die. Like, that's literally what it felt like. I was just like,
that's how it was shot.
I was like, is she dying right? Like, don't just die. What are you doing? It was like, it wasn't, I didn't feel anything. Sanji's backstory as a child is number one for me in this live action. That one I really felt. Yeah, then Nami's.
Nami's was really good.
Nami's was really good. I think in the anime, hers is top for me. Just because I guess
explains her treachery.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it was really emotional. The way, her mom explains how she found them and all this and how she that I cried. I mean, I cried for most of the anime, as I've already said. I cry for everything. But in the live action, it was Sanji's. I really liked, how, he thought that, Zeph took everything. He had more food and all that stuff like that. And when he finds out, I thought it was
no food whatsoever.
It was done. It was done so well for the live action. Where I was like,
and they basically did it beat for beat from the manga. They didn't really change anything.
Yeah, they really didn't,
because that's how well written that scene was. They were just like, you know what? Let's just film it live.
Yeah. Yeah. So I thought that one was really good. And then Nami's story in the live action. And then Luffy's, I would say Luffy's would be next for me. Yeah.
I like that they introduced, they don't explicitly say, but I really like the introduction of the Conqueror's Haki that Shanks uses to scare away the sea beast.
Yeah.
they had the iconic, oh, I lost my arm, but I feel like that could have been more impactful.
It could have.
Because I didn't even see the monster bite him once or anything. I'm like, when did you lose that arm, bro?
I mean, you don't like really see it, and you don't see it like in the anime or anything like that, but I don't know. I think it's where maybe Luffy or Shanks was placed or how they. I was just like, wait, I was confused actually. Yeah. When I watched it, I was just like, I'm a little confused. I was like, does he still have his arm? Which arm was it? That's all I was focusing on. And then when like young Luffy was just like, your arm, and I was just like, oh shit, his arm. How did that happen? Even though I know, but it wasn't. I feel like that wasn't executed properly.
Yeah, the way it was shot felt like there was something missing in between.
Yeah, they're like, all right, move the camera away, take off his arm. All right, pretend you don't have an arm. And I was just like, wait, what? And then like the blood wasn't blooding for me, and I was just like, yeah, that one was a hit. And then honestly, I'm gonna have to put I think I'm gonna have to put Usopp's childhood backstory.
It's the weakest one.
No, I'm gonna put it before Zoro's. I didn't feel Zoro's wasn't emotional enough for me. I liked the talk he had with his friend about, you know, they're gonna do this together, they're gonna see who can be the best and all that stuff. But I didn't feel like enough emotion from it at all. Like with Usopp's, I felt a little bad. I was just like, he's just a bad little kid running around and got no daddy and got no mama and just, you know. Yeah. And that's the order for me in this live action. Okay. Yeah, for like, cause Zoro's childhood story goes last for this one, cause I don't think they did that right. But it was.
So those are the flashbacks. So for the most part, they nailed those plot points. Sometimes it's lacking in some of the characters' backstory. And I think that it has to do with like time constraints. Maybe they felt like they kind of had to get this out of the way and go back to the main story. I wish they took a little more time with some of their backstories so that we can really get fully emotionally invested. But for the most part, they did hit those points. It's fine. I hope they tighten that up in a future season if they do get one. Because there's going to be a lot of other characters with more tragic backstories. I mean, we haven't gotten to Robin yet, but we'll get there when we get there. So yeah, that's basically all those flashbacks. And then for basically like the finale with like the fishmen, I think that was set up really well because it's directly connected with Nami. And Nami is really one of the most interesting characters because, again, we see her developing a relationship with these Straw Hat pirate members, but she ditches them, takes a Grand Line map. It's revealed that she's working with Arlong this whole time because she's trying to pay back debt so that she can buy the village for their freedom that she grew up in. And I really like how they set up the fishmen. I don't know if this was set up in the manga and anime. It's been a while since I saw the story, but I do like that they give a dimension to the fish people where they genuinely, they're doing all these bad things because they're hurt by humans and how they've been facing prejudice. They're essentially black-coded characters. I think they make it obvious. Yeah. It's because they mentioned how fishmen were enslaved at one point, and then even now when they're like emancipated, they're not seen as equals. Arlong judges the fishman server at the Barati, talking about like, oh, like you need to fucking get out of here and stop working for humans. I appreciated that they added that in there. I don't remember if that was mentioned in the anime and manga, if that was part of the fishmen lore that they used to be oppressed.
Yeah, no, that's literally like the different themes in One Piece, racism.
There's a lot of slavery.
Yeah, well, yeah, there's a lot of slavery,
in
but
different arcs.
There's different like
classism.
Prejudice and classism.
Yeah.
You know, you have the celestial dragons, all that stuff.
A lot of political.
Yeah, a lot of political things. It touches on a lot of things that. Maybe as a kid, if you're watching it go over your head, or even now it could go over some people's head, but it's just like if you are invested and you watch everything as a whole, you're gonna be like, huh, that's kind of fucked up. That's kind of I get what they're doing there. Yeah. And it's kind of masked so well that you wouldn't notice it because of all the crazy colors and the crazy characters and designs and the action and how they do it. But if you really want to break it down and see like what's going on, you know, even I guess you could say, like, if you want to go back to a couple episodes with Garp and the Marine base or whatever, the corruption within the Marines that you see, Kobe's just like, oh, I want to be a Marine. They're good. They're supposed to help people. But we see that that's not actually
he sees that
true.
the system's corrupt.
Exactly.
Which,
Garp
yeah.
acknowledges that it is corrupt and stuff. And, Garp also mentions at one point to Kobe, he's just like, he's been in the Marines for like basically almost all his life. And he's like, he's had a chance to move up, to be higher up. But he said if he did go higher up, he wouldn't be able to do what he like really wants, be in charge of himself and do what he's actually doing, like him going after Luffy or whatever. That wouldn't be able to slide, if he was higher up, you know? So it's just like he acknowledges that things are corrupt. What is it? Axe Hand Morgan?
Yeah.
He was corrupt as well, too.
Yeah.
And, that's why he basically like shut that down, took some of his men or whatever, cleaned that up, and before moving on to the next story and stuff. But I think that there are definitely a lot of themes in One Piece, and like you mentioned with Arlong and the fishmen, that's basically what they're going for.
Yeah.
And they are hurt, and that's why they are doing what they are doing. As much as it sucks to see that happen to Nami and stuff, it's just like, I can understand why they're the way they are. It makes sense. And as the story goes further, not in the live action, but just One Piece in general, you're going to see why things are the way they are. The characters that you're introduced to, you're going to see how they tie together, what they know, what information they bring to the Straw Hats, who are so like open and accepting. Like Jinbei, for instance, he's a fishman. Like the things that he's been through, his past, that's major. It really is. So, but yeah, like you were saying.
How'd you feel about the fishmen basically just like listening to trap music all the time? Like there's trap music in One Piece. It's funny.
It is funny. I mean, I wasn't
bothered by it, surprisingly, but I was just like, these fish people are literally just black people. It's like, I don't know how I feel about this because they're all villains.
Yeah, I mean, that's like one group, Arlong and his group.
Yeah, because there's other fish people that come along that aren't.
Yeah.
They're not extremists. They're not hateful.
Yeah, I mean, they live in their own little world that most people probably didn't think was like a thing. But yeah, no, I thought it was funny. I was just honestly too distracted by the
makeup.
The makeup, is like really funny. Like that giant puffer head guy was just really ugly.
It was so gross.
The fishman with the bad Botox.
No Hachi. I think is that the
I
name?
know. Yeah, I think
Octopus?
it was Hachi. I wanted
Octopus.
that in there, but I was just like, maybe they didn't have enough money
No
to
budget
do that.
for the tentacles.
Yeah, because then he would have been fighting Zoro. And I mean, that would have added a little bit longer. Yeah, I was actually looking forward to that. I was like, oh, no Hachi. Are we gonna do that? Maybe
they'll make him a hero in future seasons.
I mean, he basically is.
Yeah.
You need to keep watching.
I know. Yeah. No, I think they set up the culture of the fishmen pretty good, and I hope to see a lot more of their world in the future adaptations.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to see them as I keeping up with the manga. So their world was really cool. I really liked that Nami's directly tied to this conflict. I wish we had more time to establish a relationship with her and the villagers post her childhood, because we get a sense that there's tension, but I wish that I got more interactions, more complicated feelings between her and like that leader of the village. I forget his name, the one with the big hat and the mustache. Because I know that he had a lot more screen time in the anime, and I remember that. But I mean, for the sake of runtime, they just couldn't fit that in. So I wish I got a little more back and forth with Nami and the village currently at her current age, because we at least got enough of her with her childhood. That was great. But that's fine. That worked out just fine.
Well, I didn't think so. I thought that was fine for what they had to cut, because like I said, they cut a lot of things.
Yeah, they had to.
Instantly you see that there's tension there, and like there's disbelief that Nami's on this side and hurt, and with the sister who's black, yay. I think that's funny. Anybody who may or may not be and they make them black, it's really funny to me. But
I love it.
Nobody's complained about it yet, and I hope I'm not like making anybody complain about it now if they're listening, but whatever, you're stupid. But I thought that there was tension. I felt the tension there. I don't know, like it's hard because it's just like knowing the story, watching it, reading it.
You're filling in the gaps.
I'm filling in the gaps. So I don't know if that makes me like, I'm just like, okay, no, that's fine. I get it, because I already know.
I mean, I felt it too for the most part as somebody who isn't as like caught up with the story and I don't fully remember everything from East Blue.
Yeah.
I felt like there's enough for people like who are newcomers to get attached to this plot line as well.
I would love to hear what people,
Yeah.
who they've never any One Piece anything, never watched it or read it, like how did they feel about these things that we're just like, oh, maybe this could have been done better, or I didn't feel.
I mean, based on the critic ratings and the audience scores on Rotten Tomatoes, everyone's enjoying it. Everyone's really like buying into it.
Yeah.
It's a mix of the fandom and then also people who've never seen this before in
Yeah.
any capacity. So I think it is like something that works for newcomers who are not familiar with this property.
Yeah.
So
because I think they did more than enough with her backstory as a child and how they, showed that she went to Arlong after he killed her mom and said, I want to join you and I'll draw your maps, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Them tattooing her as a young girl, I was like, oh my God, poor little baby Nami. Like, I was like, really, it was really sad. And it's just like, once her sister realizes, what she was actually doing, and then she goes to tell the town, but I think in the anime, they already knew what she was doing.
Probably.
I can't remember. It's been a while, but I think they already knew that she was saving up money for them. But here they made it as if they didn't know, and the sister goes and tells them and stuff, and
that makes it more emotionally impactful. Definitely.
And that they're willing to stand behind her and try to help, even though they're like, I'm like, they're fishmen. Like,
what the fuck you gonna do? Sanji could barely kick through like any of these fish dudes.
Exactly. So I felt the story. I felt her story was done very well. Her and her, like I think I said already, like her and Sanji, not just their background stories too, but just the connection. Maybe it's because they have those people there, because Zoro doesn't really have anybody.
Right.
Like, Luffy has like people for him his town, but then you have his grandpa who's going after him and stuff. So in a sense, he doesn't have any. Usopp doesn't have anybody either. Yeah. But Nami still has her village. She has her sister. She's has these people. Family. That she still interacts with. Yeah. And then Sanji has Zeph, who basically saved him and stuff. And I mean, people who know the story and stuff like that, Sanji's true background, where he's really from and all that stuff, so this connection, this father figure for him and family, and the other chefs too, I feel like that was really good and emotional for me. I do wish Sanji's like farewell was a little bit more emotional. I didn't get like enough. I literally filled in the blanks with the anime and like made it more emotional for myself. But it was pretty like, hit for hit with the farewell. But I wanted like a little bit more. So I think
again, that's time constraint.
Yeah. Problems. And I think that's also like, I don't want to call it an issue, but like
minor gripe.
Yeah. They did the best that they can. It's just like, I want to cry. Like, make me cry. Like,
that's
I really
what One Piece is all
it.
about.
Yeah, because that's all I did in the anime, and I'm just like, if it's these 2D characters and like the not so great animation from the early days could like make me burst into tears. Yeah. Like it's nice to see that in a live action where it's like these are like real people. Like, I'm a real person. Like, let's like make me emotional. So that's what I'm always worried about with these live actions. It's just like, are you gonna be able to like put that out there and like put the emotion into this so that way I can like really feel it, so I can see it? I think that's what it's all about. That's why I can't understand these people talking about AI this or whatever and stuff for future shows, movies, or writing and all that stuff, because I'm just like, where's the emotion? Where are the good actors out there to actually show the emotion like they used to, like they're supposed to? You want to take that away, then it's not cinema, it's not art, it's not what it's supposed to be, But I'm getting into something completely different. But I thought that Nami's what they did with Nami's story and her village in the background and all that stuff, I think that worked pretty well for what they had and what they had to cut too.
Yeah, definitely. And it served as a great finale to the series, because that is the big pivotal moment before these groups of people decide they want to be together and go off on the Grand Line and find the One Piece. Yeah. That is a truly defining moment of these Straw Hats becoming the Straw Hat Pirates for the first time. And they really planted the seeds well. When you go back to like episode 6, because I wanted to briefly mention the Mihawk fight. I wanted to ask you real quick what your one standout fight for you, because fighting is like one of the most important concepts in anime. Like if you don't pull off the fights, like you're not gonna grab people. For me, the Mihawk fight against Zoro, it worked on a lot of levels that I didn't expect. I thought it was just gonna be like, all right, we got rid of what's his face? Mihawk kills Iron Guy.
Don Krieg.
Don Krieg, yeah. He was originally the antagonist for the Barati restaurant, but Mihawk shows up instead because Garp uses him to try to capture Luffy. Instead, he's challenged by Zoro, and they have a pretty phenomenal fight. It's a little wonky at times because, again, you're trying to do anime-style choreography with a guy with 3 swords and then this big dude with a tiny little blade.
With a giant sword strapped to his back.
Yeah. It's insane, but like for the most part, I enjoyed that fight because not only was it cool to watch, it had purpose. It put Zoro in grave danger. He's severely injured. Mihawk allows him to live because he wants to fight him at his true strength. We see Nami really show her true colors for the first time when she is telling Luffy, you need to get this man some serious help, and you need to tell people to know when to know like their limits and to not do stupid things like that.
Yeah.
And I was kind of on her side on this because this is where a side of Luffy starts coming up where he starts feeling regret and guilt and feels challenged as a captain for the first time.
Yes.
It's so beautiful to watch Nami genuinely care. Like even right before the fight, she tells Zoro like, don't do this because I'm your friend. Like, I'm telling this because I'm your friend.
Zoro's just like, bitch, you just said you ain't got no friends.
Yeah.
And I was just like, yeah, she did say that, though.
She did say that. And that's a very Zoro thing to say.
Yeah, because, I mean, I like that they're little, at the bar drinking and stuff. It was
and
they're
trading stories and telling each other what they were like growing up.
Yeah, because Zoro... He's like always, I feel like, just suspicious of everybody.
Yeah, rightly so.
Right? Yeah, everybody like except Chopper. But yeah, he's just like suspicious of everybody. Like he can tell, and he picked up that there's more to Nami.
Right.
He just doesn't know it. He thinks he knows it, but he doesn't really know what's going on. And she even says that she's like, you don't know me and stuff. So when they're playing that little drinking game, he's just like, oh yeah, I bet you were. And she's like, no, drink. I thought that was a really good scene. And those moments where like Luffy thinks like, yeah, these are my friends, everything's great and stuff. When you take him out of the picture for a little bit and you have at least like 3 of them sitting there, they don't really know each other. They are looking out for each other for the most part, but they still don't know each other, which is interesting to see. But I like that they secretly they're enjoying this. They're enjoying the company of each other. They just don't want to admit it. And, that's where some of the issues fall. I mean, obviously the story's written the way it is, but I think that's also a big thing is that's where the issues falls because they don't have that full trust yet. They don't know each other fully yet. Because if Zoro could look at her and just be like, you said you don't have any friends, so how could you say I'm your friend? And that forces him to go off and do his own things. But that has Nami staying back and worrying because she was already like ready to leave them way back when she got at any point she could have left them.
Yeah. When she didn't.
When she got the map of the Grand Line.
Yeah.
But she didn't. She stayed and, going on these adventures and, picking up Usopp and Sanji and all that stuff. So until we get to that point at the Sanji and the end of the episode, that's when she leaves. And even in that moment, she leaves because she doesn't want Luffy to die.
Yeah.
Even though she does say, yeah, just drop him in the bottom of the ocean or whatever. But I think she knew somebody was going to go get him. But I can't remember in the anime if that's like how I felt like she left before like all that happened just based off of how they switched Don Krieg and, but I like that moment where they sit down and they talk. I like that these false words are said, which lead to these other things. I like that Luffy has this like moment where he's just like, this isn't all fun and games. Like, it's not going to be great adventures and stuff. Like, his friend, like, he really cares about Zoro. Yeah. And Zoro and Luffy, they really have, like, that bond. And you see that bond that they have in different moments throughout the series or whatever. Yeah, that's his, like, his first mate or whatever. But he really does care about him. And that's what I really liked about the moment. So I think this fight, not the fight scene itself, like, I don't think I loved any of the fight scenes, like where I
So
can
you
be like,
have
oh,
no
I loved
standouts.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
no standouts for me. I don't love them, but I do
Okay.
feel like around those scenes, you know, like the aftermath of
Yeah.
you know, Zoro getting hurt and stuff, and Luffy trying to find the right words but not knowing until
Mhm.
he's like, you know, he like really realizes that he fucked up. He probably should have. He's like, I don't want to step in front of anyone's dreams or stop them and stuff like that. But it's just like, it's not about you doing that. Like, I
Yeah.
know you're all about going after your dreams and stuff, but you're still the captain. You know, you still
Mhm.
have to make tough decisions. You still have to protect your crew.
Mhm.
You know, and I know this is like way further, but even after the time skip where they get in a situation and Luffy's just like fucking up, it's just like, wait, Zoro stops and he's like, listen, Luffy, what the fuck's going on? Like,
Mhm.
this should not be happening or whatever. You need to like be serious about this.
Mhm.
And Luffy stops and he's just like, okay, I will be. Like, I got you. I understand what you're saying
Mhm.
and stuff. Because just like they didn't have this time skip and work so hard to get, you know, stronger just for him to go back to that, like, everything's great and wonderful and like I'm not really,
Yeah.
you know, worrying about anything. Like, you have to. You're in charge.
Mhm.
And I like that moment after Zoro gets hurt where he's seeing that,
Yeah.
you know? So, and then I think that's also, they use that in the live action to drive him to go after Nami because he knows that there's more. As duncy as he is and, you know, idiotic as he's always being or whatever, you know that he's well aware that there's more to certain things. There's more to people and stuff, you know, and he always sees the best in people. So I like that that part in the actor's acting of Luffy. I thought that was really greatly portrayed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. All right, I want to get into some themes real quick, or just one or two that really stood out to me. I really love that this series emphasizes the importance of chosen families, because that's the heart of One Piece as a whole, is that it helps redefine what family is to people. We see that even in real life, we see more and more that the nuclear family is being challenged. We see a lot of mixtures of families. We have people that grow up with their uncles or grandmothers or an older sibling. You know, stuff happens in real life where you just don't have your parents or your immediate family.
Yeah.
You have your foster parents or you live with friends. One Piece really knows how to build characters who are raised by people that have chosen them. You know, whether it's Luffy with Shanks, he was essentially kind of like a father figure, as well as with Garp. Is Garp actually blood related
To Luffy?
Yeah. Okay, so he at least has his grandfather. We see that, for example, like Sanji, he had a father figure in Zeph.
Yeah.
And then my favorite family that we've seen is Nami with, you know, her adoptive sister and her adoptive mother. None of them are related to each other. They were all strangers to each other at one point. I love that they basically just like wrap this whole series in a bow tie with a new chosen family, which is the Straw Hat Pirates.
Yeah.
They are their own chosen family. They're all choosing each other. We've seen them choose each other time and time again throughout each episode. And it just felt so earned. It didn't feel like, oh, we just came together just because convenience.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that this series, whether it's the live action or the manga, that Oda really puts an emphasis on people choosing each other, that even if you don't have access to blood-related family, sometimes blood-related family is just trash.
Ain't shit.
Yeah, like we'll see later on with Sanji. That's way further ahead in the series, but some people don't have blood-related family members to turn to.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful to see so much emphasis on chosen families and people always choosing each other, even if they are not related. They have nothing to do with each other, but they have love for each other. And I just didn't see any moments where it felt forced. It didn't feel undercooked. They really nailed all those points. And I it's one of my favorite themes in storytelling in general. Like, it's why I like the first Shazam movie so much. Another story about chosen family, and it feels really touching. So that's like one that really stood out for me, and I think they nailed it with having the pirates all come together at the end. And then you have different friendships set up, like with Luffy and Kobe. You see that they're gonna have a strong bond that just keeps getting stronger, even if the distance grows physically between them.
Yeah.
it's guaranteed. We can see it in their eyes that they're going to be encountering with each other. There's going to be more conflict, more strife, because the more Kobe becomes a better Marine, Luffy becomes a better pirate, and their goals will start clashing more.
Yeah.
But you see that their friendship is not going to die. It's going to be tested, but it most likely will not end.
Mm-hmm.
So you have all kinds of different bonds forming, even in between people who are in conflict with their goals, which I really loved. I also really like you mentioned this briefly with Garp in conflict with Kobe's philosophy, the fight between freedom and law and order.
Mm-hmm.
Kobe genuinely wants to do good. He's essentially like one of those people that wants to be a cop, but being a cop in and of itself is a very problematic, dangerous position.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're working in an abusive system, and we see that with the Marines. We saw that with, I forget the name of one of the generals who basically put out that bounty on Luffy that we saw in the Kuro episodes.
That stupid looking cat.
Yeah, that cat
Zumi
guy.
something, or was it something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we see that there are corrupt assholes already in the Marines. And I like that they already set up that back and forth with Kobe being this very pure idealist of wanting to actually do good, and Garp kind of being that like anchor to reality that, listen, you're going to have to do some dirty things. That's just how things work. And we'll see how that challenges Garp as well. And I also just like the fight between just the presence of Marines and the presence of pirates, because pirates are basically representative of just pure, unadulterated freedom in the world.
Mm-hmm.
They don't restrict themselves to laws or really morals unless that's their choice. And they're going up against Marines who have like a whole code of rules and like laws. And it'll be really interesting to see how that plays out in future series as we get more and more interactions with different pirates and different Marines. Like, what is this overall world going to look like? We see that Marines can be very corrupt. We're going to see islands where there's so much political corruption. And we're going to see so many moments of pirates upending that, specifically the Straw Hats.
Yeah.
It'll be fascinating to see how this world shapes up. You know, is gaining this One Piece going to radically change the world where there's going to be more freedom involved and less like military presence? Like, I don't know. Like, that's something that's been in my mind throughout this whole series that I didn't really think about before when I was watching the anime.
Yeah, and you have the Revolutionary Army too. Don't forget that.
Yes, there's not just pirates versus military. There's literally like regular everyday people building up militias in different islands, which we'll get to in future stories. But I really like that they're sticking to Oda's main focus of, you know, government's involvement in the world of pirates. And, you know, is this a world where they can coexist, or does one or the other have to fall? Because from what I see, I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't think y'all can coexist.
They can, because we have Mihawk, Warlord. He is working like basically kind of like for the government, for the Marines and stuff like that. They have the seven warlords of the sea.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're not introduced to all of them, but he's one of them. Garp calls him up, and it's just like Kobe was just like, "Were you just talking with, you know, pirate blah blah blah?" And he's just like, "Yeah." So we see that they do work together for their benefit. So the Marines look the other way, but they still kind of control these pirates. But at least they think they control the pirates, because Mihawk's just like, you think you control me, but I'm just in this until it no longer benefits me, basically.
Basically, yeah.
You know? So, yeah, it's a lot of clashing. I mean...
it's complex.
It's very complex. And as you said, there's a lot of themes, a lot going on in One Piece that you might not notice at first, but if you watch it or read it again, you're going to see exactly what themes Oda put in there, you know?
Each arc has their own unique theme that he's focusing on. It's not just one single thing that the story focuses on.
Yeah, it goes
so it's a lot to juggle.
So many things that happens in our everyday lives, and that's going on in our world. Yeah.
So I'm excited to see how that plays out moving forward, if there's more seasons in this. All right, I just want to ask one big question, then we can go into ratings. Mm-hmm. Why did this adaptation work?
Because One Piece is the greatest of all time. There's no fucking up with One Piece. One Piece can do no wrong.
I guess that's simplifying it. No, but they essentially have like a whole Bible to work off of. There's like no excuse to like drop or miss any important information or crucial plot points or themes.
Yeah.
So
that would have been their biggest. That would have flopped if that's what they did. If they tried to like go this way, make a character
Take
different
shortcuts.
here, or change how a character really is. I think that would have been like a really bad move. But it's just like you literally all we want to do is see it live action. That's literally what we
we want a good story out of it.
Yes, don't do anything stupid. You have everything here.
Mm-hmm.
You have the manga, you have the anime. Now
do your research.
Do your research.
Which they did.
Yeah, that's all you have to do. I don't want you to write in your own. You don't need to write in the story is written for you. It is right there. You don't need to do anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, fluff it a little bit more, give me a little bit more, but based off of the research that you're doing, because there's so much that we don't see either in the anime or in the manga. There's more details on the character. Like Oda knows more about what this character is really like, where you could put that in there. You can incorporate that, but make it linked to the story. So I think that's why it works, because like you mentioned earlier, Cowboy Bebop, what was vicious? Based off of the anime, I was just like, this doesn't make any sense. Why is he this way? Like, the story could have been good, everything could, but they made things too different. They wanted to put a spin on it, a twist on it. No, when we want live action, when we ask for live action, do what's already there. We literally just want to see it live. That's how I feel. We want to see it live and, fleshed out better, or just not different, but just literally just live action. That's all I can say about it. I know it's just like, well, what about writing the story? Yeah, you have to write the story. I just assumed they would do that, but they like to go this way and go that way and essentially be Zorro all over the shit. Yeah, and it's just like, you got to give it a little bit more, but you don't need to do something completely different.
Yeah.
And costumes are important. Don't make it look like some cheesy ass cosplay, Full Metal and all that stuff. Like, like, I was worried about that in the promo pics and all that stuff like that, because they're in One Piece, they look too clean. They looked a little bit, it didn't. I was just like, is this gonna work? Like, what is their angle on this? But it didn't look like that when I watched it. As I said before, I was just like trying to continue hating it as I watched on, but I was like, I can't hate it no more. Let me stop being a hater. It's not working.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
So why do you think it worked?
I think I have a couple things in mind. First of all, it's a similar thing I took away from the Last of Us adaptation we recently got earlier this year on HBO Max. They knew when to stick to the plot points of the material and when to deviate and rearrange or cut certain things. They understood that there's no way you can do a page-for-page adaptation, because that will never work. You're doing it on a different medium.
Yeah.
You can get away with so much in animation that you just cannot do in live action. I think this team, first of all, like you mentioned, they did their research. They really thoroughly researched, and I got that sense of that from the interviews that I've witnessed with the showrunners and the directors and the writers. They really cared about this project. Even the people that weren't familiar with this material, they wanted to do homework because they wanted to do this justice. They cared about bringing the story to life. And I think that is a crucial part. They knew what to do in terms of, okay, we got to bring the spirit of these characters and the story. How do we do that while making these changes without losing that spirit? I think that is a crucial thing that so many live action anime adaptations miss. Sometimes they just like to do beat for beat action, but it's like, where's the story? Because it's flat. I don't care about the characters. It's coming off really goofy, or worse, it's just completely muted and flat and I don't feel anything. It's always been those two extremes. I think they really went all out and just did their homework. They knew how to connect these stories, because, again, these are different arcs in one single saga of East Blue. It's not like doing a 2-hour movie where you have one main villain and a couple henchmen.
Yeah.
You had to really pay attention to every character as much as you could, give them their stories, connect them as seamlessly as possible. And I think they took all the time that they needed to do this, because this was years of preparation and years of just like writing. So I think it was that. And I also think it's great collaboration between Japanese and European producers, because this is a production between Japanese and British production companies, I believe. That's why you have so many like European actors in there. Because even with the Japanese live action adaptations, like say for like live action Attack on Titan, that was all Japanese production, but even they lost a sense of the story and what made it special. And because they were just so caught up in spectacle and competing with Hollywood, they came out with a flat ass story. So I think collaboration with different creators also really benefited this show. And it kind of feels like, again, the theme of chosen families. Like there's people that you work with so well. And I think that played into it. And Oda being part of that decision making as well also helped. And I don't want people to think like, oh, see, if you just get like the anime creator to make the decisions, it'll be a perfect adaptation.
No, because he doesn't make shows. He doesn't make TV shows. He doesn't make movies.
But the creators always went to him for notes. They would show him footage and they would ask him, oh, what do you think? Like, do you think this captures this character well? Do you think this captures this moment very well? And then he would decide whether yes or no, and then they'll just go with whatever notes that he makes. But for the most part, he's kind of hands off. He's not the one directing or anything.
Exactly.
He's just there as consultation. And he was lucky enough to have enough involvement because there's so many creators where Hollywood says, oh yeah, you can come be like, a consultant, but they just completely block them out. Or they'll take a few notes and then they'll just throw it away.
It's like you sold the rights and it's not your business anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
That sort of thing.
Like with World War Z, it's nothing like the book. The author was supposed to give notes and then they never once listened to him. They never once brought him in, and it turned into that thing. So it was a lot of collaboration was also like another thing that I think made this work. So I think meticulous homework and collaboration were like the biggest thing, and not just caring about the material, just being a fan of it combined with all these other aspects, I think is what made this work. You can't just do one or the other by itself. There has to be like a lot of things working together, and I think those were like the main things. I'll be curious to see what other people think made this live action adaptation work, because I'm sure I'm missing stuff.
Yeah.
But I think that's the takeaway for me.
You mentioned spectacle too. I feel like this didn't really have like that action-packed spectacle.
No, there were moments of it, but they didn't focus so much on it.
Yes, exactly. And I think that also helped it, because like they could have
Which is great.
Yeah, they could have easily done that.
Yeah.
If they didn't cut like the Don Creek part or anything like that, they could have done that very easily and made it really, really bad. But I think that was another thing for me, because I was like, I really don't want to see Luffy stretching every 2 seconds, and they didn't do that. You know, which I thought that was really good that they didn't do that, because I was just like, we get it, he stretches, he's gonna show us every once in a while, but I don't think it's necessary all the time. I think a lot of the times where he's like in the anime where he's sitting on the head of the Going Merry, he stretches up to get there, but in the show we just see him up there at some point. Seeing cuts to him just being up there, not necessary. You know, and for me that would be in a sense spectacle. That's like the thing, you're just like, how are they gonna make him do that? How's that gonna look? You know, and they don't do that too much, which I was worried about.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like the moments of spectacle they do show, they had narrative purpose. Like this one little quick shot of Mihawk slicing the shit out of a boat with his sword.
Yes.
You sending a shockwave. It's just like, it could easily be unnecessary like aesthetics, but they just want to emphasize how powerful he is. They need to show why he's a warlord.
And why Zoro wants to go up against him, and what Zoro has to work towards as well too. Because that slash for Zoro comes after time skip when he returns. He can do that too. Yeah. You know? So it's really you know.
Yeah, definitely. And even just like the final battle with Arlong when the whole tower is collapsing, that's huge spectacle, but it raises the stakes too. There's purpose behind these moments of spectacle. They really sprinkle it throughout the series so that they don't get lost in the sauce and forget about story and character, which is ultimately what's going to make this adaptation work.
And that's like what's important. I think that's what has me continuing to read and watch One Piece.
It's the characters.
It's the story. It's their bond, the friendship, the family. That's what makes me like want to read the story and continue and see how far that they can get together. I mean, obviously all the fight scenes, they're cool. You know, it's always good to see the Straw Hats beat someone's ass or beat a bunch of people's asses. We love that. But the story is also very important, and there's so many characters, so many stories to love. Even like the the randomest characters. They could be in there just for a couple of episodes, and they could have this crazy ass story that has you crying.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think not putting in so much spectacle for me is what made it good, I think, and sticking to what's there already, making small arrangements that make the story work and can still move the story forward to the point where I don't feel like, that just totally lost me.
Yeah.
It was on track and on point for most of the part. Obviously, there's like a few things that could have been better, more emotional, more story time, a little more detail here, but I think they did it really good, and I'm surprised. And like I said, I claim and acknowledge the show.
You better. All right, with that, let's get into our ratings. I want you to go first.
What? You just put me out there like that.
You want me to go first?
No, I'll go first. So I am going to give this a loaded potato.
You're on my team.
Yes. So that's basically, if you guys don't know, we could say it's like a 4 out of 5.
Yeah.
8 out of 10 or whatever you want to rank. But a loaded potato. I feel like there was, it put everything that it needed to, that it could.
It gave what it had.
Yes. What it had, it did what it needed to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it has me pleasantly surprised. I followed most of the cast on Instagram.
That's how you know. That's how I know you like something then.
Yes, and I think it really did what it had to do with what it had. I like the arrangements that it made for certain stories and plot and cutting certain things. I think they did a really good job with that. And I just like how pleasantly surprised I was. I like that there was still emotion in some of my favorite scenes. I like how that was done. And I think they did a really good job. And I am looking forward, and I'm hoping that there would be a season 2.
I can't see how they won't get one.
I know.
With the success that it's having critically.
I will be the first one up midnight whenever Netflix want to drop that. They better not do.
God. I think it'll be like 3 a.m. for us.
I know. I want to binge it. Don't do a weekly thing. I don't got time for that. Like, I just want to, take this in, but I give this a loaded potato because I was pleasantly surprised, and I had to check myself and tell myself stop being a hater. So yes.
I'm with you there. I'm giving this a loaded potato. So again, it's like a 4 out of 5 rating, lowest being rotten potato, then salty spud, baked potato, load potato, and then finally the most potatoes, the legendary grade. I'm giving it the loaded potato for all the reasons you mentioned. I really loved it starting from episode 1. As soon as episode 1 ended, I'm like, more. I need more.
I know. Right, I wanted to slap you and be like, stop liking it. Don't do that.
I know. Yeah. I gave in so fast. I was just like, they did it. They fucking did it.
Yes.
They fucking did it. It is insane. So loaded potato for this. And I'll be really curious to see what our listeners think about this. I'll put in polls and questions regarding this topic as well. And I really hope people engage with this because I want to get a sense of what people feel about this show if they've watched it. So yeah, that's 2 loaded potatoes from us. This is a really fascinating, great series. I can't wait to see more of it.
Yeah.
Hollywood, pay your fucking writers, pay your actors, pay your directors, pay everyone. That's the manpower that makes your money so that we can get the show faster and all our movies faster. Pay your damn writers, pay your actors, pay your writers. And with that, we're signing off. Thank you so much for joining on this latest installment of The Most Potato. Guys, remember to follow us on your favorite platforms. Follow, hit the bell as well so that you don't miss out on any new episodes. We've got the episodes uploaded on YouTube, so leave a comment and leave your thoughts on what we've discussed as well. So with that, thank you, Jess, for joining me on this adventure.
Oh, yes, of course.
All right, guys, and we'll see you guys on the next one. One Piece.
The greatest anime of all time.